Okay, so tonight we are talking about Elon Musk and Tesla again. And no, we aren't talking about crashing rockets or Twitter drama this time. We're diving into Tesla's big robotaxi ambitions. Think about it, you waking up, maybe grabbing some coffee, and instead of battling traffic on your way to work, you just send your Tesla off to make some money for you. It's picking up passengers, navigating the city, all while you relax. It's a bold vision, right? Musk is basically saying your Tesla could be the next Airbnb. But is it realistic or is this just more hype? We'll unpack all of that tonight.
What I find fascinating about this whole robotaxi thing is that it isn't just about making Teslas drive themselves. It's about fundamentally changing how we view transportation. Imagine cities designed around autonomous vehicles, less traffic, maybe even fewer people owning cars, all because transportation is so readily available and so affordable.
Right, it's a complete shift, and that's what we'll be digging into tonight. The technology behind it, the regulations, the skepticism.
Because let's not forget, Tesla has a history of making big promises about self-driving features.
Yeah, their full self-driving capability comes to mind, which, as many Tesla owners have discovered, isn't quite as full as the name might suggest.
Exactly. And that gap between the marketing and the reality, that's at the heart of a lot of the doubts people have. Because while Tesla's system can handle some driving tasks quite well, achieving the level of reliability needed for true driverless capability, where the car is making all the decisions all the time, well, that's a whole other ball game.
And then you bring in those independent tests, like the AMCI testing. They found that Tesla's full self-driving system required driver intervention every 13 miles on average.
Every 13 miles.
Yeah.
Imagine relying on a taxi service, where every 13 miles the driver slams on the brakes and says, sorry, you're going to have to take it from here.
That's essentially what those disengagements are, right?
Exactly. And it's not just the frequency. It's the types of situations that were causing these disengagements. Things like navigating construction zones, making unprotected left turns, or even reacting to pedestrians. These are all things that humans navigate relatively easily, but they exposed the limitations of even advanced AI systems.
So it's not just about recognizing objects, it's about understanding how humans behave.
Precisely. It's that ability to read subtle cues, make split-second decisions. That's what makes human drivers, for all their flaws, still much better at navigating complex environments than AI.
Okay, so we've got the technology challenges, but then we also have to think about the regulatory hurdles. Governments are understandably cautious about unleashing robotaxis. Safety has to be the top priority.
Absolutely. And that's where that cruise accident in San Francisco really comes into play.
You mean the one where the cruise robotaxi was involved in an accident with a pedestrian?
That's the one. And while accidents can always happen, even with human drivers, that incident really highlighted the stakes involved here and the immense pressure on companies like Cruise and Tesla to prove that their technology is truly safe and reliable.
Because one accident like that, and suddenly everyone's a lot more hesitant, a lot less trusting.
Right, and that's the backdrop against which Tesla is making these bold robotaxi claims. They're not just trying to convince investors or tech enthusiasts. They need to convince regulators, policymakers, and everyday people that their robotaxis are ready for the real world.
So a lot to unpack here, but let's take a quick break and then we'll dive into what Tesla needs to do to actually make this robotaxi vision a reality. So that cruise incident really put the whole industry under a microscope. It's clear that regulators are going to be incredibly tough on this test.
Oh, absolutely. And for Tesla, this is where things get really tricky. They're trying to do two insanely difficult things at the same time.
Okay, lay it on me.
So first, they're trying to perfect a technology that's never existed. And on top of that, they need to convince the world, regulators included, that this brand new tech is safe enough to be let loose.
So it's not enough to just say, hey, trust us, our robotaxis are safe.
Not even close. They need to back it up, and I mean really back it up, with solid evidence.
We're talking about all that real-world driving data, right? Millions of miles showing how these cars handle every possible situation.
Exactly that. And not just handle them, but how they compare to humans behind the wheel. The real test here isn't, is it safe? It's, is it safer than what we have now?
So Tesla needs to prove their robotaxis are less likely to crash than human drivers, which, considering how unpredictable driving can be, that sounds almost impossible.
It's a monumental task, no question. But it's not just about how much data they gather, it's about what they do with it. Transparency is key here. Regulators, and frankly the public, need to understand how Tesla's system makes decisions, how it handles those curveballs, the unexpected stuff that can trip up even the smartest AI.
So no more black boxes, no more just trust us.
Transparency is absolutely crucial, especially when the stakes are this high.
Because it's one thing to trust a computer with your Spotify playlist. It's a whole other thing to trust it with your life and everyone else's on the road.
You hit the nail on the head. This robotaxi revolution hinges on more than just tech. It hinges on trust.
So Tesla needs to nail the technology and build that trust. But let's say they manage to pull it off. They win over the regulators, perfect the technology. What does that world even look like? Who wins? Who loses in a world with Tesla robotaxis everywhere?
Now, that is the billion-dollar question. And like any major tech disruption, there are going to be winners and losers.
So who stands to gain the most if Musk's vision becomes reality? Is it game over for Uber, Lyft, traditional car companies?
I wouldn't say it's game over for anyone just yet, but it could definitely shake things up.
All right, so let's break it down. Let's say these Tesla robotaxis actually become a thing. What happens to companies like Uber and Lyft?
Well, they might seem like the most vulnerable, right? Their whole business model relies on human drivers. If people can just hail a robotaxi, potentially cheaper, maybe even more reliable, why would they bother with a traditional ride-sharing service?
Yeah, it's that classic disruption story, isn't it?
It is, but just like we've seen time and time again, there's always room for adaptation. And Uber and Lyft, they're not just going to sit back and watch this happen.
So they're already making moves in the autonomous vehicle space.
Oh, absolutely. They're investing heavily in self-driving technology. And they've got a major advantage that Tesla doesn't, which is data. Massive amounts of data. They know user preferences. They have detailed maps. They understand how people move around cities.
So it could become a battle of ecosystems then. Tesla with the cars, Uber and Lyft with the networks and the data.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the traditional car manufacturer.
Right, they can't be too happy about this.
They might be playing catch-up in the autonomous driving game. But they have the factories, the engineers, the money. They could easily become major players in the robotaxi world.
So it's not just about Tesla versus the world anymore.
Not at all. This is shaping up to be a multi-front battle. And for the consumer, that's a good thing.
How so?
More competition means more innovation, potentially lower prices, and ideally, a safer and more efficient transportation system for everyone.
All right, so buckle up, everyone. It's going to be a wild ride.
Hold on tight, because this robotaxi revolution, it's not just about changing how we get around. It has the potential to reshape our cities, our economies, maybe even our lives.
So much to think about, so much to watch for. What are some key things our listeners should keep an eye on?
Pay attention to any news about regulatory approvals. That's huge. Keep an ear out for partnerships, who's teaming up with who, and most importantly, look for real-world results. It's not enough for Tesla to just talk about robotaxis anymore. They need to prove their technology is improving, it's safe, and it actually works.
So it's a waiting game, but the stakes are incredibly high.
The future of transportation is at stake. And how this all plays out, it's going to have a profound impact on all of us.
Well, we'll definitely be following every twist and turn. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive. This has been fascinating.
It's been my pleasure.
And for our listeners, if you found this conversation thought-provoking, we encourage you to do your own research, explore the different angles, because the future of transportation, it's not set in stone. It's being shaped right now, and your informed opinions matter. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time, when we'll take another deep dive into the topics that are shaping our world. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.